I think we're sacrificing the savings rate. We're sacrificing people who save money. We're sacrificing all of that to buy a little more growth. People don't understand that it takes more than $1 of debt to create $1 of GDP. They just don't understand that. That's how this is created. We have a fake economy. It's a fake economy that's right now we have $1 trillion deficit. How does that make you the greatest economy ever? How does that work? Well, it only costs us $1 trillion a year to have this economy.
SDBullion.com is a high-volume physical gold, silver, and precious metal dealer. We are committed to being your trusted source for low-cost, highest quality investment-grade bullion products. Visit SDBullion.com for more information.
Welcome to another Silver Doctors exclusive. Today I'm excited to have returning guest, Mr. Jerry Robertson. He's an author and economist, and so he's joined us to share his thoughts on the global economy and a variety of other subject matter. I'm curious to find out what some things that's probably concerns you. We're well beyond the halfway point of 2019, and just want to find out what are some things you're keeping an eye on.
That's a good question. It does seem as if the geopolitical situation is getting a little out of hand. We monitor that too, in addition to the economic situation. The national debt, of course, is a scandal. The $1 trillion deficits are ridiculous. These are all problems. China, the USChina situation is certainly much, much deeper, I think, than most people understand or realize. So I think has a lot of deep roots that could really potentially spill over into something bigger. And I think you will see it more in the form of proxy issues. So it may not be just straight up US-China specific issues, but it might show up in Hong Kong, or it might show up and spill over in North Korea or things like that. So there's a lot of tangential kind of things that could go wrong with the US-China relationship. The lights have been going out in New York City for the last couple of weeks. We've long warned that the electric grid here in the United States is woefully unprepared for the kind of cyber warfare that we're entering. Also slightly concerned about what's happening in the Gulf, in the Persian Gulf. This ratcheting up of war talk with Iran is just wildly old. I mean, these are real people. They have these are real people with real feelings, real lives, real children, real women, real men in Iran who are being demonized here in the press. Most people who have an opinion about Iran are not willing to go there with a rifle to go defend their country. By the way, the Persian Gulf is 6,000 miles away. So all of these incursions that we're hearing about happening in the Gulf, Iran's not on our Gulf of Mexico, are they, Mike?
No,
I don't think there's warships from Iran in our Gulf. So as to why we're in a tizzy about what's happening 6,000 miles away can only be explained by the exorbitant privilege we have with the US dollar and with the petrodollar system, whereby we have to impose economic terrorism oftentimes upon nations just to prop up our corrupt currency. It's quite astonishing. So I think I'm fearful of the blowback that the United States is going to get for its economic terrorism that it has perpetuated upon the globe in order to prop up its dollar.
Right. Fair enough. Now, within that explanation there, you gave us about 3 or 4 things. So I want to go back to the very first one. And you mentioned the relations between China and the U.S. And so I'm assuming that all ties in with the whole currency situation as well as the trade war. And so it looks like there were supposed to be discussions periodically for the last couple of weeks, months, but no deal has been made. And so every now and then President Trump will tweet saying that we're close, and then he'll say, no, we're not close. Is this more of a distraction, or is there something that he's really trying to accomplish with, balancing our trade deficits and things of that nature? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think President Trump is he has his finger on the pulse, so to speak, of what's really happening when it comes to China. Unlike presidents in the past, they've not been willing to tackle this topic and be honest with the American people. China is growing at a 6% plus rate, right? It's been growing at a breakneck pace economically for a long time. Its economy is already larger than the United States on a PPP basis. If you just purchasing power parity on GDP, you'll find out that China has been larger than the United States, according to the IMF, since 2014. Right now, if you use the rule of 72, the Chinese economy is doubling every 12 years. The United States, with its 2% growth rate, average for the last decade, is doubling every 36 years. So China is already bigger than the United States. Over the next 36 years, the United States economy is going to double, but China is going to double 1, 2, 3 times. So the next 10, 20, 30 years are going to determine, it's going to be a big shift. And I think Trump, although it's been extremely rough and rocky, I think that he has, at least you could probably say, done the country a favor by pointing at China. I don't think that the way that they're dealing with China is very smart. I think the Chinese are outsmarting us over and over again, whether it's North Korea, which they have a tremendous relationship with, whether it's Hong Kong, whether it's whatever other situation, the economy. I mean, China has outsmarted us for a very long time, and it's almost a checkmate for the United States. And I think you'll even hear this. It was President Carter who was talking not too long ago somewhere, and he was asked, or he had mentioned that President Trump had called him and was saying that he was worried about China being so far ahead of the United States. This is what presidents talk about. This isn't what the mainstream media talks about. This isn't what you typically hear on YouTube or whatever. But when presidents talk, they're worried about China. China is the big threat. It's the looming threat to the United States. And I don't mean that they're going to come and bomb us. I mean that they're going to humiliate us economically. In other words, for a long time, we've been the number one, economy in the world. We've had the U.S. dollar. It's given us this exorbitant privilege. It's afforded us all of this prestige around the world. It's allowed us to dictate, and as I said before, even impose economic terrorism upon countries unabated. Mm-hmm. China is checking that now because it's finally getting to a place where it has enough economic clout, but also that economic clout is growing into political clout. Some might say that by bringing this up or by merely pointing to it, that somehow you are against the United States and for China. I think that's how well the programming has been here in the United States, and the propaganda is that if you even recognize that America could soon be number 2, if not already, you're considered unpatriotic. It's just simply a matter of fact. It's a matter of math. The United States is losing its place, and just like Britain did. Britain didn't want to talk about it back at the beginning of the 20th century. They didn't want to bring it up over and over again. It was a sore spot for them. It's the same thing for the United States at the beginning of the 21st century. We're losing. We're losing to China, and China is accelerating in the space of artificial intelligence. It's beating us in 5G. It's beating us when it comes to robotics. It's ahead of us when it comes to cryptocurrency. I mean, they're just wildly ahead of us, technologically speaking. And in the technological society of the 21st century, that matters.
Right, I do agree. And to remember, like over the last couple of years myself, keeping an eye on matters that happen outside of our country, I've noticed that with the long terms, I think life appointment of President Xi Jinping as their primary president, or whatever the title he has going forward for the foreseeable future, puts him in a very unique position where he's going to actually have a position of power a lot longer than any president we're going to have here. And then on top of that, knowing that they tend to think long term as far as their 30-year agenda, 30-year plan. So I'm more so curious about your thoughts with the One Belt, One Road initiative. Is that all the things that they've put in place, is the next monetary system or whatever their future plans might be? Does it entail them having that number one spot, utilizing that particular mechanism that they're developing and probably finalizing at this current moment?
Yeah. By 2025, China desires to have 10 different key technologies that they have core competence in and that they can produce for domestic purposes, semiconductors, for example, many sensitive aircraft types of technologies, and many other kinds of technologies. These are technologies that the United States has dominated, and the West, not just the United States, but the West has dominated. And the fact that China would encroach in these is extremely problematic, especially in America's Fat Elvis phase. I mean, if you remember the rise of Elvis Presley, I was a big Elvis Presley fan, and 1956, I wasn't around, but 1956, when he rises, he's a young kid, he's 21 years old, and, he's the hottest thing since sliced bread. By the time you get to the end of his life, kind of the Fat Elvis phase, he's paranoid, he's filled with drugs, he's had too much success, he's had too much too fast. The United States, I think, is in a Fat Elvis phase. And the fact that we're drunk on power, we're completely up to our eyeballs in debt. We're drugged out beyond all means by our big pharma industries. And on top of that, we're paranoid beyond all measure. We're paranoid at everything. So the fact that China wants to develop technologies to compete in the economy is a problem for Fat Elvis, right? That Fat Elvis America doesn't want that he's too paranoid. He can't allow China to have any of those key technologies. He has to be the one who creates them. So that's 2025. By 2035, China wants to not only have all of those technologies as core competencies and providing them and delivering them to their domestic economy, but they also want to be international players with those same technologies. By 2049, China wants to actually have the same kind of international status as, say, in America, as the United States of America. So by 2049, that's the China dream. And the Belt and Road Initiative is all a part of this build out of China's. And of course, it's demonized here in the United States because, again, that's what Fat Elvis would do. He's paranoid. He's paranoid about anything that he's not involved in. He's paranoid about anything that may catch him up. And the United States should be paranoid. I mean, they have military bases in 800 different military bases around the world. They're spread thin beyond all reason. They are wildly exposed for attacks like the cyber attacks that may be happening up in New York right now. I mean, so it's understandable, but the point is that China is just simply moving according to its self-determination, something that the United States claims is God-given. So in other words, it's completely fine apparently for Americans to do it, but when China does it, it's a problem. So yes, I see. So I'm basically commenting on this saying that, yes, I see the build out of this. I see it as a natural, normal response of China, which has been an empire before in the past. It's not a stranger to empire, and it's rising again. It's really quite an anomaly, Mike, that the West has had its day in the sun as long as it has. You go back historically for the last several thousand years, China's been the largest economy in the world, also India. So it's only been in recent centuries where we've seen this, kind of a move away from the mean. I think we're seeing a reversion now back to the historical mean as China reasserts its place in economics, in the global economy. We could go into why that happened, but that's not important right now. The key thing is that the Belt and Road Initiative, I think, is going to be very key for China. It's going to be it's also a stark reminder of how China is operating and why it's beating us is the fact that it's making friends and allies. It's helping countries build out. It's helping Africa. Mm-hmm. It's helping Africa. I mean, the United States is ignoring Africa while China is stepping into Africa. It's unbelievable. It's really quite stunning. Because the United States is so spread out and so thin that it just simply can't be as nimble as China. China, by the way, is officially the world's largest creditor. We've often said it, but there was some recent data in a new study that was put out a couple of days ago, just stunning. And in fact, not only is it the world's largest official creditor, but it is owed money by countries that outstanding amounts of money from countries that might surprise many of us. And that comes with a lot of power. When you're the lender, you make the rules. And Washington has enjoyed that status for a long time. China's stepping in now to enjoy some of that.
Right. And so I wonder, with all these events that's happening, as you mentioned, the whole situation in the Persian Gulf area, we have a lot of noise being made down in Venezuela with the United States of America looking to or reappoint their own president in Juan Guaido. And then, everything else between Russia, you name it, a lot of things happen all around us. But if we were to look inward in our own house and our own lack of proper financial stewardship, and so deficits, debt. I just read an article mentioning about the pension situation that's brewing right now. So there's so many things that's happening internally. Does all this play into the need for China and other nations to begin diversifying away from the status quo as far as the dollar, in your opinion?
Oh, heavens, Mike. I mean, back in 2009, whenever we were coming out of the biggest economic crash since the Great Depression, the national debt was standing at around $9 or $10 trillion. It now stands at $22 trillion and counting. It's not slowing. Doesn't matter what party you put in office. I think that's been another thing that hopefully people are seeing, is that your political allegiance is futile when it comes to slowing the reckless fiscal train that is going to smash into a brick wall. Doesn't matter who you vote for. They're not going to stop spending. I mean, that's one of the hard lessons that we all have to learn. They're not going to stop spending no matter what they say. President Trump said he was going to pay off the national debt in 8 years. It's going to be easy, he told us. Well, now the debt is climbing, and we learn now that the debt ceiling is going to be suspended. He didn't eliminate the debt. He eliminated the debt ceiling, right? So just a total U-turn. But nobody believed it from the beginning. Nobody believed that was going to happen. Maybe some people did, but nobody really believed that. I think China and many of these other countries are rightfully looking at the United States, much like France and Germany and others looked at the United States back in 1970s and said, in 1960s, and said, what are you guys, crazy? You're bombing all these different countries. You're not paying for anything. You don't have a budget. We don't have a budget today, Mike. I mean, so these countries rightfully are pulling money away from the United States. You see it in the Treasury securities data. You also see that just foreign direct investment by China in the United States has collapsed in 2018. So, I think rightfully people are, and then of course, not only that, not only China and all of these other countries providing some sort of competition, but then you have cryptocurrency, right? Which we spent on our last podcast, followthemoney.com. People can go and listen to our podcast, one we just did on why Washington is afraid and why it fears blockchain. Is the fact that blockchain is going to steamroll these politicians' hopes and aspirations to continue to be corrupt. Blockchain makes everything transparent, and they don't know what to do. They can't stop it. They're going to try to regulate it, but they can't stop it. So, yeah, I think for solutions, I think for individuals out there say, gosh, I see the same thing. I see the deficit. I see the debts. I see the denial about both of them. I see the rise of China. Things are happening. What do you do? Well, I think you really have to have a plan. We've been saying this ad nauseum, feel like a broken record, saying this for so long. You've got to have a plan. We have our 5 levels of financial freedom on our website. I encourage people to go check out followthemoney.com/5 levels. It's just the same thing that my wife and I did to get off of the grid, to break free financially. I strongly encourage people to consider diversifying their savings, their investments, and also their income. They always want to talk to a trusted financial advisor. Whatever you do, don't do your financial planning on YouTube or on the internet. You need to talk to a trusted financial advisor about specifics. But generally speaking, diversifying, most people just have a house and a 401k, and both of those are government controlled. So it's important for them to have some diversified investments, like maybe gold. I like gold. I own gold. Silver. I own gold. I own silver. We just called a new uptrend in silver, by the way, for the first time in a while on the 12th of July. So our service here at followthemoney.com, we provide uptrend and downtrend alerts. So when silver forms a new uptrend in our system, we'll alert our members. We just did that on July 12th. We alerted our members to a new uptrend opportunity in gold back in January. So we sent out an email alert on that. So our members receive those kinds of uptrend alerts. I think so for whether you're trading or whether you're investing, I think just having some exposure. I think even Bitcoin, serves as kind of a digital gold. At least that's what Jerome Powell told us at the recent Senate hearing. He said that Bitcoin was a digital store of value or a speculative store of value, just like gold.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think just having some different things going on in your portfolio is a really smart idea. Diversifying your income too, not just being dependent upon one income stream.
Right.
There's lots of ideas on our website.
Right. Now, as we, approach we're beyond the halfway point now this year. And so there's a lot of talks about economic slowdown. And so, before the Great Recession, it was more so something that started here and it's spread throughout. Now it looks like it's a lot of things already happening around us now. There's a lot of other economies that are in recessionary type of environments. And so it looks like the pressure is going to be put on the Fed, and they're talking about the need to possibly consider rate cuts this month amongst the narrative of the economy is doing great. So I think this is the first time of me actually paying attention that I guess on one end, the economy is doing well, but then a lot of people also said we need to cut to keep this growth going. So what are your thoughts on that? Will they cut in this month or before this year period? And then what will that, what domino will that probably tip over that'll keep this thing rolling?
Wow. Yeah, you can go to the CME's Fed Watch tool. You can type into CME Fed Watch tool, and you can see what the Fed futures market is forecasting for the rate cut. And I haven't checked it in the last couple of days, but the last time I checked it, it was a 100% chance of a rate cut. I think it was about 70%, a 25% basis cut, and then 30% saying a 50% basis cut. That got gyrated last week, of course, with John Williams' comments from the New York Fed. But regardless of all of that, we expect a rate cut. We expect a rate cut incoming. We expect negative interest rates. We think the United States are going to go to negative interest rates. They're going to try to get ahead of what they see coming. Economically speaking, the trade war with China did a number on the economy, and so that's going to be showing up, and it is showing up in the data. I think that there's more fallout, and the United States did not have to pick this fight with China right now. It's probably smart that, again, we're aware of what's happening with China. It's important for the American people because at some point, Mike, there's going to be a headline. This headline's going to happen. I would say it's probably going to happen within the next 5 years, probably earlier than that. And the headline is going to go something like this. It's going to be on CBS, on New York Times, on Fox News, and it's going to say this: China is now the number one world economy, the number one economy in the world. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I'm curious as to America's ability to psychologically stand that. I don't know how well we're going to handle it. And I think part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing right now is because we're trying to stave off reality. We don't want to have to deal with the fact of what's actually happening. So we just cut rates. Your economy is going up by 3% right now, roughly. That's kind of new, and it certainly hasn't hit the same peak that it was underneath Obama. It peaked out a little higher than that during Obama. So we haven't even reached the peak of Obama's economy. We're still floating down here between 2 and 3%. And the idea here that we need to cut rates to do what? To move that higher? I think that's what it is. I think we're sacrificing the savings rate. We're sacrificing people who save money. We're sacrificing all of that to buy a little more growth. People don't understand that it takes more than $1 of debt to create $1 of GDP. They just don't understand that. Yeah. That's how this is created. We have a fake economy. It's a fake economy that's right now we have $1 trillion deficit. How does that make you the greatest economy ever? How does that work? Well, it only costs us $1 trillion a year to have this economy.
Yeah.
And so by lowering rates, the hope is that we're going to be able to juice the economy even more, and somehow trickle down theory and tax cuts and all of this are all going to work. It's nonsense. It's been nonsense. It's always been nonsense.
So the question will be, with all this additional juice to keep this narrative going, how much more time can they buy if they actually drop negative to get ahead of other central banks, or how much longer can they continue to do this, in your opinion?
Well, I like what Keynes once said. He said the markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. And I agree with that. I think that trying to time this is bad idea. We'll see it on the charts. We'll know. The market tends to get ahead of the economy. It'll happen right before the economy typically. So like the stock market really began to crater before the economy topped out in December of 2007. So the stock market kind of gives you an early signal. And so right now the stock market's chugging higher. If you lower rates, I would expect stocks to go higher. That's what they want. They're trying to juice asset prices, make the rich richer. And right now, 10% of the United States owns 84% of the stocks. I mean, so if you cut interest rates, you're really helping, just a handful of people. I don't know how much time there is, but I do know that we'll typically see that develop on the chart. So we're trend traders. And so when we see that formation happen, we're going to be making that call, just like we did back in 2007, 2008. The next crash is going to be horrific. Assuming that it's the big one. I mean, we're obviously going to have normal crashes, which have even been suspended through policy. But when we actually have the big economic flu, when it finally hits, these asset prices are wildly overvalued, many of them. And even real estate is starting to get back to that place. So I don't know the date, Mike. I wish I was smart enough. I bet you there's somebody you could ask who will know, but I don't. Yeah. But I do know that it'll likely show up on the charts as it always has, and we'll try to profit by using shorts on the way down. It's unfortunate. We really don't have to do this. We could actually raise rates. We could actually force fiscal responsibility. We could actually not remove the debt ceiling. We could actually start doing things, but the bubble's going to have to pop. I guess we have to learn the hard way.
Right. Now, as we draw towards the ends of our discussion, we both can agree that it's inevitable that a crash, recession, collapse, or whatever, there's been a lot of words being given to this next event that's either underway or coming. Let's talk about life beyond that point. Will things, possibly return back to quote unquote normal, or will this be the entire shift of economic power that you hinted at earlier, where we'll no longer be the leading nation? Therefore, the Federal Reserve note might not be the primary reserve currency, and therefore somebody else will be calling the shots, or what are some possible scenarios or things that you probably think about or don't want to think about our future?
Well, I would prefer to think that it's like a frog in the boiling pot. Obviously that's what I would prefer to think. You don't really see historically just spectacular destructions of a currency and everybody's living in a cave. I mean, you don't see that in history. That's not really what we see either. It's not really a Mad Max scenario. What we see is just simply, quite frankly, I think the psychological pain, Mike, will be greater than the economic pain. The economic pain will be great, but I don't think the Americans have the stomach to be number two. I don't think they do. They've always been told they're number one. They've always been told that. They think that God made them number one. I mean, I think that's part of what's behind this, is that when they find out that someone else has taken capitalism and kind of made it with different characteristics and has used it to get ahead of them, I don't know what the psychological repercussions of that are going to be, but I know they won't be good. It might lead to war. It might lead to some sort of denial. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do know that typically what happens is a period of deflation, because the amount of money that's in the system, typically inflation happens first, followed by deflation. So you would have a period of high inflation, unless they're able to find a way around it. And I think that's what you see maybe with what's happening with Facebook and Libra. Libra seems like maybe petrodollar 2.0. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I know it's backed up by the dollar, the yen, the British pound, the euro. It seems like a coup with cryptocurrency to me. I'm just kind of watching that one with one eye on it. I'm not really sure what that is, but that could certainly get into the pockets and create artificial demand for the US dollar in places right now where China may want to get first. And so I don't know. I think overall, as we go forward, what we all are going to see is that the prices of everything that we're used to now that keep going up, well, things can't keep going up. And we live right now where the present is the minimum. Everything right now has to go up. Your income has to go up. Your housing value has to go up. Your stock prices have to go up. Your 401k has to go up. Your pension has to go up. Your hourly rate has to go up, because we live in an inflationary, corrupt, debt-based monetary system. And that's the symptom of that system. But when that system is destroyed, or when that system, gets hit, it loses its ability to do that. Of course, typically you have a period of high inflation first. Again, I want to stress that. You have the high inflation first, but then it's followed by a loss of the ability to print money out of thin air. You have to suddenly begin to live within your means, and austerity has to be imposed. We think of Greece, and we think of other countries who've had to impose austerity. Well, the United States needs to impose some austerity. It needs to have some fiscal responsibility, and there's many different ways you can impose that. I mean, one of the ways you could do it is with term limits. You could actually force people to be somewhat responsible for their actions in Washington. But I don't think people are really interested in those solutions. I think they're interested in I think most people, Mike, are interested in who are kind of following this, just tend to be into the political infighting. That it's a tit for tat. It's real surface topics. It's never really drilling down and solving the real problems. So it can be frustrating for financial educators like you, like me. I mean, it becomes frustrating because you see all the diversions and the shiny objects that people chase, and you think, why are you doing this? We have real problems we have to deal with. And, but for some reason, people, they're attracted to it's like a car wreck. You just can't stop looking at it. Same thing with Trump and his opponents. I mean, it's just a big diversion for the American people. There could not be a bigger diversion right now for the American people when they need to be focused upon what's important. We've been distracted, sadly.
All right. Well, as we draw towards the end of our chat, the final question. I got a couple more coming to mind, but want to be respectful of your time. Precious metals, gold and silver. You mentioned earlier in our discussion that you saw the trend coming, and so, in your opinion, according to what you see, is this the beginning of something that's promising for those that have been patiently waiting to see somewhat of a price increase or a price rise in metals, just for confidence sake, behind all of the things that we've talked about, all the problems? Is this the beginning of something, or is this a pump fake in your opinion?
That's a good question, because we did see a few fakes earlier. We saw a little bit of a fake back in 2016. We had a nice rally, but the price of gold is really attached to the faith in institutions and faith in man. When the faith in man's institutions begins to fail, gold begins to shine. And that's what's happening right now, is that there's a lot of jitteriness around the institutions. That's why Bitcoin was born. Bitcoin, back in 2008, 2009, or 2007, 2008, whenever I was writing my book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation, that was my solution. That was my effort. That was what I was doing. I saw what was happening, and I wrote a book, and I gave it to the world. Somebody else named Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he is, he was also coming up. He saw the same thing. And he said, what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a protocol that will completely destroy the United States dollar and completely destroy this debt-based system. And he created it and unleashed it. And slowly but surely, people are looking at Bitcoin saying, wait, what is this? What do you mean? It's finite in supply. It's only 21 million that can ever be created. And it's not fiat-based. It's not debt-based. It's nobody's liability. The government can't control it. The government can't. So I think the Bitcoiners and gold, I think oftentimes you'll see people who are pro-Bitcoin or pro-gold. I'm both. I've owned Bitcoin since 2013. I'm a big believer in blockchain technology as being a solution for a lot of different industries. But I also am very bullish on gold for the long term. And the more you see a destruction of people's faith in the institutions, the more you're going to see Bitcoin and gold both go up. So, I think gold is going up right now because people are rightfully concerned, just like the question you asked a while ago. Why is the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates when the economy is the greatest economy ever? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why people are, confused and they're buying gold. And so if that gets resolved, if something is immediately resolved, then it could just be a fake. But I don't think that we're going to resolve anything. I don't think there is a resolution to this. I think they're going to keep spending, and it's going to continue to get more and more uncertain until finally they just can't afford the bills anymore. So gold, I think long term, I think if you're thinking short term, I don't know, but long term, I think current prices will be viewed one day as very, very cheap.
All right, I do agree. Well, Jerry Robinson, it's been great having you join us here again on Silver Doctors. For those that might be watching or coming across Jerry Robinson for the first time, can you let them know how they can find out more about you? And you listed a couple of things as far as educational resources. Can you once again point the people in a direction to stay in touch with what you have going on?
Sure, Mike. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it's followthemoney.com. Very simple, followthemoney.com. And there we have a podcast. It's a free podcast you can listen to. We put out regularly. Great content, great guests. We also have a lot of education. We have a YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. But we do a lot of great free educational. We have a lot of great educational information on our website. Thousands and thousands of posts over the years we put up, so people can find. And I would encourage them to just simply go to followthemoney.com. We also have, when you get there, you'll see you can enter your name and email address. And if you do that, we'll send you several things. We're going to send you just one email, but you're going to get a video, an hour-long video where I talk about the greatest traders who've ever lived. Great educational information. Our petrodollar report, which is about 50 pages. You've probably seen that before. Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to send you also another report. So yeah, you just simply go there. If you just want some free stuff, go to followthemoney.com and check it out. Got a lot of great information there for people who are wanting to be financially responsible.